Hello there, it's Lisa Starr with another episode of StarrCast, where we speak with inspiring folks from the world of wellness, and you will seldom find anyone more inspiring than my guest today, Sheila McCann, currently the general manager for the UK of Lanzerhof, but Sheila has had many well-known positions throughout her spa and wellness career, and we're so happy to have her with us today. Welcome, Sheila.
Good morning. Thank you, Lisa. It's very kind of you to offer.
Well, you know, the whole purpose of this podcast is to show how many wonderful opportunities there are to work in wellness. And I have known you a long time, and I find you to be just so with it and on top of things. And you have so much to share with others in the industry. It seemed only right, that you would appear here. And hence my dogged following of you till we landed you this afternoon. So, Sheila, you grew up in Canada, correct?
I did.
And whereabouts in Canada?
I grew up in Montreal, Canada,
Mhm.
basically in the suburbs, quite sort of last block of suburbia before country and fields.
And as a young woman, what did you think you wanted to do with yourself career-wise?
Ooh, interesting question. I think in my case, my interests grew much earlier on. When I was young, there used to be a program that was on television every day at noon. And it was a wonderful Hungarian woman called Edith Saray, who
Mhm.
had a beauty program on, and she was teaching people how to look after themselves and do various things. And she was very glamorous and very interesting.
And it was on every day?
It was on every day, and I
I
would
love
race
it.
home from school and I would sit down and I would be eating my lunch and watching this. And by about maybe 10 or 11, when there was a science project to do in school, there were things like homemade shampoos,
Mhm.
face creams, fruit and egg masks, whatever. So I kind of feel like this profession chose me rather than I chose it. And when I finished high school, I didn't go the route of most of my friends into college and university. I actually went to Edith Saray's school and
Ah,
trained to be an esthetician initially.
I love it. A disciple from early on. Did you tell her the story of how you came to be there?
I did, and I think she had probably quite a few recruits
Mhm.
in the school along the way because of her very grand worldview as well as everything else. And as a small child growing up in Canada, this very beautiful exotic woman from Hungary or wherever she was from, um, just represented something so different, and I just needed a little piece of that.
That is such a great story. So you finished your beauty therapy diploma at her school.
Yeah, I went on then to work in my local beauty salon. And I was a therapist and did a few extra courses along the way in aromatherapy. I did theater makeup, television
Mhm.
makeup, all that side of things. And then studied massage and various other things as well to sort of get the rounded international CEDESCO certificate as it was.
Mhm. So what were your favorite services to perform?
Um, I really like doing facials.
Mhm.
Facials and makeup were probably the area that I did, but I was a bit of a clumsy therapist. So my destiny was not to lie in the treatment room, I'm afraid.
Mhm.
Uh, and I liked the business side. It really gave me a new insight, and at the same time, I realized I needed to learn a lot more. So I started doing continuing education courses in the evenings. First, I did a marketing certificate
Mhm.
and a diploma. And later in life, I went on to do an MBA much later on. So I didn't follow the classical education path through.
Yeah, but that's okay because I bet you that you brought a lot to your schooling, a lot of perspective and knowledge that students who come right from high school don't have.
Well, at the time when I decided to do the MBA, there was nothing relevant to spa. There were no spa management courses. There was
Mhm.
nothing around that. So I had to do a program which enabled me a certain amount of self-direction, and then draw on research, which was only just even beginning to pop up, and try to piece together. And in the end, I wrote my dissertation on revenue management and spas.
Mm-hmm.
Led to quite a few interesting discussions over the years with various people that I've worked with, because they didn't see that.
No, especially from the hotel perspective, of course, where revenue management is a daily consideration. But back then in the spa, right, it was just, oh, the spa's over here and please go enjoy it. And if it covered its payroll, that was pretty much enough. A little different than today.
We were the playground at the end of the corridor as far as most people were concerned.
Right. So did you work in a hotel spa as well?
Mm-hmm. I worked in Grey Shot Spa, which is a destination spa, obviously with the hotel component. I've worked at the Ritz in Paris on a consultancy project.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with a big owner of the Marriott franchise for the UK,
Mm-hmm.
and ended up working on some project stuff with them as well, which is
Well, let's
interesting.
back up a little. You're a therapist in Canada. How did you end up at Grey Shot in the UK?
Well, I joined very early when I decided that therapy was not going to be my future, and got a bit more business education. And I joined a group called Mira Linder, which it was probably the first day spa in Canada and the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined there and quickly became the manager there and looked after the business operations. The owner was a lovely lady called Lily Alexander, and I'm still in touch with Lily to this
Oh,
day.
lovely.
I have her to credit for teaching me to dress, to speak, to spell, and all sorts
Mm-hmm.
of other things. So
All good skills.
all good skills. She was a wonderful woman, and she and her husband um, looked after the Canadian business, and her mum, Mira, looked after the American business in Detroit. So I got a lot of exposure and a lot of trust in me early on, and that really was quite formative.
Mm-hmm. And so that was still based in Canada.
That was based in Canada. Then we headed overseas, which is when I joined Grey Shot and was spa and leisure manager, as it was termed then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for a good 7 or 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
looking after all the operations there. And Grey Shot was a wonderful place because it was off the radar as far as PR went. There was never any advertising. And it was a place where a lot of people in the media came for detox and
Maybe
rest.
they went because it was off the radar.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
They did. And the names of people that I met, there wasn't a day I'd come home and didn't think, wow, it was such a stellar client base. But at the end of the day, it taught me very much we're all the same. When you put on the bathrobe, it's one of the
Mm-hmm.
greatest levelers of
For
humankind.
sure. For sure. So Grey Shot at that time was really well known for their weight management programs, and you went for what, 7 days minimum?
I think the average was about the actual statistical average was about 8 or 9 nights, but I think the minimum was 4, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not mistaken. And so I really cut my teeth in a leadership role there even further, because the the time I was there, I think we had 6 or 7 different general managers, and about 50% of the time we had no GM, and it was just myself and a colleague in
Goodness.
the house and a
Mm-hmm.
medical person, and the three of us kept
Ran
it.
things. So you
Yeah,
learned a lot of things a little bit outside the scope of your work.
it was a bit of baptism by fire,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but I loved it and it was great. And the owner was lovely, always very good to me.
That happens. So many of the guests here on StarrCast have had similar stories, baptism by fire, and especially back when we all started in this industry in the 80s, 90s, there were not clear sort of guidelines for these jobs, and they were evolving, and you just had to learn as you went.
And if you didn't have the positive intent, you could find it pretty grueling. But if you really enjoyed being with people and learning and trying to develop systems so that you could work smarter, not harder,
Mm-hmm.
it really
Mm.
made a big difference. And it was along the way that I realized that I needed more business education. So I went on to do a part-time MBA.
And you did that in the UK?
I did. I did it with Oxford Brookes University because they had a hospitality and tourism, which
Oh,
was
perfect.
closest I could find.
So when you completed that, were you still at Gray Shot?
No, I moved on to Whitbread, which is owned by which owned the Marriott franchise for the UK. And when I completed it, I actually went out to Asia because that had been a lifelong dream, and opportunity knocked, and I was absolutely raring to go.
Wow, that's a big move.
It was, and that's how I ended up at Spa Botanica.
Which is,
Uh,
I think, where we met actually when you were at
yeah,
Spa
I think it
Botanica
was.
in
Yeah.
Singapore. So, when you left the UK, did you have a position you went to, or did you just move on a hunch and figure it out as you went?
No, I went with a position
Hmm.
in Singapore, which was great because it's such an easy way for a Westerner to kind of get a, a good
Indeed.
understanding of Asian cultures.
Uh-huh. Without
Uh,
it being too scary.
yeah, it's Asia for beginners, as some people say.
Exactly. No, no,
But
totally agreed.
it does give you that exposure and understanding, but it's much more comfortable as a living space.
Hmm.
And English is by and large the main first language there. So
Well, Spa Botanica was so ahead of its time. It's on Sentosa Island, in the city of Singapore, but it's just the whole island is a collection of beautiful resorts and one more exotic than the other. But Spa Botanica was one of the first, was it not?
it was definitely,
And
yeah.
beautiful outdoor spaces and hot baths and treatment rooms and just lovely, lovely area. How large is the facility there, Sheila?
Gosh, I can't remember now. It had extensive outside spa gardens as well
Hmm.
as probably 20 plus treatment rooms
Hmm.
inside. Very multi-purpose and good facilities.
But a
And
day spa, true, right? No one slept there. I mean, you just went for the spa treatments.
but they stayed at the hotel,
Uh-huh.
at the Sentosa Resort and Spa, which is now, I believe, a Sofitel. Uh,
Okay.
but we also developed us something called the Seven Eden Wellness Center, which was in a building opposite, right in the same compound, where we had medical facilities and
Hmm.
much bigger gym, really focused much more on the wellness aspect. So that was a good that brand was ready to roll out across
Hmm.
Asia.
Well, here you were growing up in Canada, worked in UK. Now you're in Asia. You're managing dozens, I'm sure, of therapists who probably had less English than you might have been used to. And it's a big resort. I mean, how big was the learning curve for you there?
It was deep because there are a lot of cultural and in some cases superstitious elements of getting
Hmm.
things right and gaining the trust of the team, and that part was sometimes quite fun. There were lots of things to learn about the natural environment as well. I had an absolutely wonderful operations manager that I hired who was Balinese.
Hmm.
Early into it, I realized I needed someone with some more local knowledge
Yes.
than I had. And he came in, and the first day he walked around and he looked up and he said, "Are we trying to kill people here?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Coconuts. Every year they kill people."
Ah,
Silly things that you would never think of,
uh-huh.
not having grown up in a tropical environment, and all sorts of other creatures
So
and
what
critters.
would you have to pick the coconuts so they don't land on people's coconut, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And there
Lesson
were
learned.
snakes and monitor lizards
Hmm.
and all sorts of other interesting creatures, which,
Fun in the jungle.
yes.
Well, I remember actually you telling me about Chinese New Year and managing around that and all of the customs around that. I mean, these are just things you would not know if you did not work in Asia for sure.
Yeah, no, the Chinese New Year drum parade with the lion is definitely a very noisy and not terribly spa friendly experience for the Western guest who has no idea what's going on. But
Mhm.
yeah, we learned.
So you were at Spa Botanica for 3 years, it looks like.
Yes,
And
yeah.
your next move was where?
Interestingly, it was Hong Kong with Shangri-La Hotels and Resorts. I was pinched, if you will,
Hmm.
by Ian Brewis, who had followed in my footsteps back at Greyshot as general manager,
Oh,
seen, I guess, the results of some of the work that I had done. And we met in Sentosa,
hmm.
and he said to me, "I'm coming back for you one day when I'm up and ready," and he did.
That's
And
great.
we had a great offer with Shangri-La Hotels and Resorts, which was growing quickly. And I worked on developing all of the operational systems and rollout to go with the Chi brand,
Hmm.
which was the Tibetan Himalayan spa brand, which ended up, I think I did 20 openings in
Oh my
5 years
goodness. Wow.
in different parts of the world. And as their footprint grew globally, that meant I was traveling more and more.
Hmm.
Fascinating, and trying to coordinate openings in Maldives, Japan, and Boracay, Philippines concurrent were you learn to do really efficient systems because you have to. And I was
But what a shift from you're managing one location, you drive to work every day, and suddenly you're on a plane managing multiple projects. I mean, how did you adjust to that sort of
I
scale
loved
of
it.
work? You loved it.
I loved it. I loved it because it was something that really hadn't been done before. The setting up and systematizing and getting
Mhm.
everything functional. I was fortunate to be, I guess you'd say, chosen or volunteered for the brand quality team. So that gave me a new set of learning working with people who were taking all the statistical data that was coming in on customer feedback, looking at key drivers, and seeing how to really take that concept forward.
So you at the time you left Shangri-La, how many properties were under your management purview?
38, I
Oh my
think.
goodness.
And
1
there,
to 38 is a big difference.
yeah, like I said, you learn to do things really efficiently. Um, and then there were quite a few more in the pipeline, but because the systems were there and everything was set up, it was easier, I think, for them to take it forward.
Well, I can speak to the efficacy of your methods, Sheila, because having been to chi spas, I mean, they are superlative experiences. It's, beautifully done from start to finish. So I know many kudos for that are due to you.
Well, there were lots of other people involved as well.
So you went on and you decided to go back to managing one location, essentially.
Well, it was the step between being, albeit a group spa director, and being a general manager in a property. And someone who I knew had applied for the position knew it wasn't for him for whatever reasons, and
Hmm.
said, "Sheila, this one's got your name on it." And
Hmm.
I was sort of umming and ahhing and taking a bit of time out for myself to decide what next. And when I heard the name, because I at one point I decided I was going to take a year off and do nothing and just
Hmm.
really rest. And when I heard the name, I thought, no, I definitely have to go for this one. It took me about
Absolutely. I mean, Shiva Sam was the gold standard of healthcare and destination spa in the world at that
yeah.
time.
So I had already met Kun Grip through the various conferences, and I approached him and said I'd like to be considered for. And very quickly, I was on board, and
Hmm.
it great experience. I
What
spent
was your mandate when you arrived?
really to enhance the quality even further to take it to a level that was truly world class,
Hmm.
but also to develop the people, the local people, to give them as much as they could um, take on in terms of a different leadership style, etc. But it is a very sensitive culture, the Thai culture. So part of the mandate was you need to learn the culture. You need to be in that space,
Hmm.
and how we function, how we think, and how we work. So I went from a very diverse team to actually a very uniform team with only a couple of expats. The rest were
Hmm.
all.
What would you say were some of the main differences you needed to learn about that Thai culture?
It's a very respectful culture, and it's very non-confrontational. So when something's going wrong, if you don't have a very close ear to the ground, you won't know until it's too late. In
Hmm.
some cases, it's a very gentle culture, and the greater common good will almost always be the key factor. And so understanding that and always being able to explain things in that way and ensure everyone was participating in that way.
Isn't that nice? I wish more places, had that greater common good as their goal. But you're right, it is cultural for them. I mean, they don't need to be trained in it. They just work that way. And I don't know how you ingrain that in other people.
Well, it's interesting because I've been reading quite a bit recently on conscious leadership,
Hmm.
etc. And some aspects of that culture already embrace that. Now, there may be other things that perhaps meetings, for example, are they're done to decide something that's already been decided, basically, to
Hmm.
formalize something. Whereas in the West, we tend to use it to debate and to thrash out ideas. So there are aspects which are stronger or better in one culture or another, but conscious leadership is something that I think they have very strong aspects of towards
Mm.
already.
Well, that makes them very well suited to caring for other people,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
sure. So you had to oversee some renovation at Chivasam and really put it back on the map as being progressive and forward looking. And then what happened next? You'd been in Asia at this point 15 years or so.
Yeah. Well, we did also some projects because Chivasam was looking abroad. They were looking at Qatar and they were looking at Bintan, Indonesia as well.
Hmm.
So it was very fun being involved in those projects and bringing some of what I was learned from past experience to forward to that. But after that many years in Asia and being so far away from family, etc., um, we kind of felt a yearning to go back.
Hmm.
And as it happened, it was a good move, and the timing was quite good from a number of factors in family.
Well, it's just fascinating that you ended up back at Gray Shot in essence where it all started, at least the UK portion.
Yeah, well, Lanzerhof had an interest in it, and I really like the Lanzerhof brand and what they stand for, and how much more medical they were, and
Hmm.
that added another new dimension I could really take further,
Hmm.
and bringing together the very systematized UK medical system with the spa and wellness world, and actually fusing that into systems and procedures and ways of operating that were highly responsible, but
Hmm.
at the same time very innovative. It was an interesting exercise.
Do you feel like you knew what you wanted to have happen, or did you have to feel your way through all the regulatory aspects of it?
Well, I'd left the UK nearly 15 years before, so things like, in Asia, you often wish for better health and safety rules and laws to protect people. Whereas here, I think it's gone the other way. It's a little
Hmm.
bit
Too
of over,
much. Hmm.
almost, almost. So yes, coming up to speed with that very quickly. And I landed in the middle of Brexit and GDPR, the
Mm,
Global Data Protection
right.
So a lot of things to come up to speed with very, very quickly. And learning the CQC, the medical registration system here, it's a bit like doing another MBA, frankly.
Hmm. Well, you have such vast knowledge of so much at this point, Sheila. You could never predict it when you were a young woman in Canada, right? Like the things you know about the world and the cultures and operations, large and small, is just staggering.
But it's what I love. I
Hmm.
consider myself to be really fortunate that I wake up every day and I like what I do. And I can't imagine people who, you know, have the dross of dragging themselves out of bed and trying to get excited about something that they don't have any passion for.
Well, there's a reason the Global Wellness Institute awarded you the Visionary Award because you certainly have it. You've really contributed so much to so many. What do you think is next in terms of spas and wellness post pandemic? How do you see our industry changing, if at all?
I definitely think it will. I do see that medical piece being a great complement to, and the ability to have that safety net of a truly medical system is important.
Hmm.
I think we need to recognize with aging populations, guests are coming in with a much more complex set of considerations, and the best care is going to be the one that gives people the quality of life and the safety.
Hmm.
So I do see
Well,
that going forward.
spas are going to be moving beyond sort of the facials and massages into more health based treatments. Do you believe that?
I also think the energy side of things will increase because guests are a lot more sophisticated now. They've sampled and tried and explored, and I think this period of people being online, everyone's done a tremendous amount of research. They've looked into or had time to look into things that they were interested in before. Now they have a much different level of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're coming looking for answers, and they're looking for much more solution based um, approaches. And I think health prevention, um,
Mm-hmm.
preventative care will come up much more.
Well, certainly we hope that the spa industry globally that we can use this opportunity to show our clients how we can help them along that path. Even if we're not medical, we can teach them how to do better preventive care, better self-care so that they don't need the medical side.
Yeah, and I think that they can take responsibility on the lifestyle intervention side,
Mm-hmm.
and have the easy quick fix earlier on, rather than waiting till things progress to such a degree that they're the medical intervention is the only option.
That's so true, Sheila. I think that we've been urging clients for years to take responsibility, but it took a pandemic for people to sit up and say, oh, I see what I need to do, and I am responsible for myself. It's not a pill or a shot will fix me. It takes a little bit of effort to maintain the body we're given.
Yeah, yeah. They wouldn't expect it from their car, but they do from their own bodies.
That's
So,
very true. So, in closing, Sheila, you've lived in so many places. What was the best food? Where did you have the best food in all of the places you've lived?
oh, I'd probably alienate everyone if I picked one. I mean, food is fabulous. I Well, that would be hard. I also did a little stint in Paris, and I have to say
Oh,
that the French food is obviously very good, but not
pretty
necessarily
hard to beat.
healthy. But I love Asian food, all
Mhm.
different kinds of Asian food.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to see where you take us on in the future of spas and wellness uniting together. Thanks again, Sheila McCann, for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.